It is time.
Hello everyone, and yes my friends, multiple spring traps. And I know, you're likely thinking how, where, who? Well, don't worry, all that is going to be revealed in today's video. So strap yourselves in because this is going to be a wild ride.
You don't come back? Only I can pull that off.
Because in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, we're first introduced to the Springlock suit, which obviously we know is Springtrap, right? But the Springlock suit was actually introduced to us in Fredbear's family diner, likely before or during the 1983 era, because we see this in the television Easter egg from Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Now what is extremely interesting is the fact that Phone Guy actually mentions during a training tape that the suits were incredibly dangerous, and they continued to use them until a Springlock failure incident occurred at an unnamed sister location. Obviously this was not referencing William Afton at this time, meaning this was a completely different Springlock failure. Now before we get into everything else my friends, it's worth pointing out what actually made Springtrap, well, turn into Springtrap, because if that can happen to him, it can happen to others, right? Because basically what happened to him is that he was confronted by the spirits of the children he had murdered. He ran into a safe room where there was a Springlock suit placed in storage. He wore the suit to hide from the spirits, and it seemed to have worked. And because of that, he got really ballsy, stood up to the spirits, started laughing at them, mocking them. However, as the Phone Guy had previously said, these Springlock suits were prone to malfunctions, especially if any moisture or water gets on the Springlocks, and that's exactly what happens to William Afton, aka Purple Guy. All the internal springs and gears come inwards into the suit, crushing him in an agonizing, gory and brutal way. Now, it's extremely important to note here, this wasn't William Afton's first Springlock occurrence. No, he actually had another one, but let me just finish the story of William Afton first. So obviously after he was crushed and killed in this suit, his soul was kind of trapped in the animatronic, and it latched onto the animatronic and basically haunted it and enabled him to live forever in a sense inside this animatronic with his dead body decaying inside of it. That's Springtrap in a nutshell. Now, the interesting part of that entire story there is if that can happen to William Afton, surely it can happen to other people, right? If they were springlocked, right? But who else in the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise do we know that was springlocked? Well, officially we had William Afton in FNAF 3, and believe it or not, we have a Springlock suit in Five Nights at Freddy's Sister location, because on night 4, the protag Mike is actually hiding inside of it, although it's a different kind of Springlock suit, and I thoroughly explained that in another video, which I recommend checking out after this. Mike doesn't get springlocked in this suit, although it was heavily implied by Baby that someone did get springlocked in this suit.
Too dangerous. It's just big enough for one person to fit inside, but just barely.
But there's very limited evidence to prove who or what suit they were springlocked in. I thought this was definitely worth mentioning, especially because someone would probably mention this in the comment section. But that isn't another Springtrap. And as I said earlier, William Afton did actually have another Springlock failure, which didn't kill him, believe it or not. Because in the book, The Silver Eyes, it actually shows William Afton pre his Springlock suit surviving a Springlock failure. He has all the scars all over his body, indicating that he did get springlocked, but it didn't kill him. He was able to survive and escape. I think that's a really interesting piece of information, whether you believe the books are canon to the game lines or not. Now, some people might actually say that there's multiple Springtraps in the Five Nights at Freddy's 3 location. I mean, he's in several places at once. It's showing that there's multiple Springtraps, therefore there was 2, 3 of them even. Well, that's incorrect, and I just want to quickly touch on that because it's due to the lack of oxygen because of the ventilation. You have to keep yourself ventilated and have oxygen, otherwise you start hallucinating multiple Springtraps. Whoa. He starts cropping up on cameras, in front of you, left, right, center, he's everywhere. But it's simply down to not having enough oxygen. So unfortunately, there isn't multiple Springtraps in FNAF 3. But that doesn't mean there are not any anywhere else, which I'll come on to in a minute, because I know a lot of you are thinking about Into the Pit. We see a pit Bonnie or pit trap there. Is that William Afton? Is that someone else? Who is this person in this ball pit trap? Well, in a nutshell, it does kind of confirm that there are multiple Springtraps, but not the one we're thinking of. I'll get onto that later. No, this Springtrap or pit trap is a manifestation of all William Afton's hatred, evil, agony in a nutshell. It's not human, it's not animatronic, it's just pure evil, and all it wants to do is lure kids out and kill them. There's no reasoning with pit trap, it's just super animalistic, filled with hatred and agony, bloodlust even, and just wants to kill. So technically, yes, it is a Springtrap, but not the one we we are looking for. And I know you've probably got a million more questions on Into the Pit and how is Even there, but that's not for this video. I've covered that in previous videos on my live stream. No, my friends, we're on about actual Springtraps, the same golden bunny, Spring Bonnie even. And yes, there is potential for there to be other Springtraps out there. I'd like to reference Scraptrap as well, because many people are confused by his redesign. How does he all of a sudden gain a body inside of this suit, look completely different in parts? Well, this theory actually helps explain that theory as well, because the reason why there could be multiple Springtraps is what we talked about earlier. Someone has to die in a Springlock suit, right? And his soul get attached to the animatronic. And we know this happened in universe because Phone Guy himself even referenced the fact that there was another Springlocking occurrence way before William Afton's. And even further to this, you wouldn't have to just die of a Springlocking, you could simply be just shoved inside of the suit, exactly like the MCI victims. Your soul would then bond with that suit, right? Thus, for example, if you put another body inside of a Spring Bonnie suit, we could create another Springtrap, right? And that's exactly what happens in FNAF 4. Now, I know what you're thinking, how is that even possible in FNAF 4? Well, I'm actually on about the FNAF 4 mini-games we see at the end of nights. Because after completing night 2, if the player walks back to the right of the entrance room of the diner after going to the dining area, William can be witnessed inside the spare parts room, and he's put in the Spring Bonnie head on the employee. And just to be 100% clear, that is a Springlock suit. Immediately after this, the door closes, hiding both of them from view. Now you might be thinking, well, he's just simply putting the suit on this guy, surely. Well, this is William Afton. The chances are he was putting the suit on there, but for other reasons. He was probably experimenting himself, and later on, we see this exact same suit with this guy dead inside of it, because we see his clump of hair sticking out of it. Whether he was spring-locked or not makes no difference. He's been stuffed or killed inside of this suit, meaning his soul will now reside in this suit. Exactly like the MCI victims, meaning this guy will then be basically turned into another walking, killing animatronic, kid-chomping beast. Effectively creating another Springtrap. Corpse inside of it, the killer tendency, just like Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, exactly like them. Although there is one distinct difference here. It wouldn't have rotted away for 30, 40 years in the back room, like we see in FNAF 3. It'd be far more fresh, and likelihood is it wouldn't have the memories of William Afton, just his own memories, and will be driven exactly like the other MCI victims, not like the way William Afton was driven. With that information right there, we can now deduce that that Spring Bonnie guy dead in the suit would now go on to become a killer, and this opens up a whole host of other theories I've not seen covered on YouTube at all. This then could mean that the killings we see in 1987 from a Spring Bonnie could actually be this animatronic guy. It starts to open up a whole host of other theories. I mean, it's in the game there for us to find, and with the logic we use on the MCI victims, the logic we're using in-game, it's entirely possible. And I haven't even covered off agony or how that plays a part in reanimating corpses and making all kinds of other crazy thing. If you wanted to say that that isn't possible, and disregarding all the evidence based in-game, by the way, you could even go on to say that the agony could have easily have possessed the suit, which is a difference to the soul, and not even to mention Remnant. But I'm not going to get into all that because that could be quite confusing. The main thing for me is this will confirm multiple Springtraps, Spring Bonnie costumes, which could be out there and still alive to this day. Who knows really what happened to this other guy in this Spring Bonnie suit? And that is where my other theory comes into play. This guy could be the Scraptrap we see. I mean, it would explain the totally different design change from Springtrap to Scraptrap, although there are a few things wrong with this and a few things we haven't covered, so I recommend checking this video out to thoroughly explain it all. I'd also like to mention that we've just enabled memberships for the channel, and if you want your name displayed here at the end of the video with exclusive perks and benefits, join us and become a theorist on the channel today. Thank you for watching to the very end. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Twisted for Twisted Animatronic. Stay safe out there, superstars. However, as this... Obviously, this was not referencing...